Love finances, the other F word, and want to support the show? Become a patron by going to patreon.com/FTOFW. You'll get special features, a shout out on the air, and early releases. Or if you prefer, pick up some merchandise at financestheotherfword.com.
As fantastic a CFP as Mel O is, as wonderful an attorney as I am, and as good as Stormy is at whatever it is he does, please do note that anything said in our podcasts are our opinions alone and are not meant to be taken as financial or legal advice.
Welcome to Finances, the Other F Word, a Gen Xer podcast for musicians and music lovers, where we discuss money and music without all the pretentious bullshit. Here are your hosts, Zoe Terry, attorney at large, Stormy Andrews, founder of Yokel Local Marketing, and Mel O, certified financial planner and author of Finances, the Other F Word. Listener discretion is advised.
So, hey guys, welcome to Finances, the Other F Word, and part 3 in our series of Bitcoin, and our final part 3. And we were all just recording a little tidbit for Patreon, and we all decided we needed to go get a drink, which I think I started, but that's fine. They're both enablers. But the thing that I was cracking up as I was going downstairs to get the vodka is I started thinking about, we're almost 2 years on now, right?
Woohoo!
In April. And remember how hesitant we were to drink on air?
Yeah.
What
Don't open the bottle.
Oh, yeah, like,
don't make the shh.
Well, but you know what? When we were doing that, it's because we were driving to a location and then we had to drive home immediately after the show. So then that was, but now here you can get drunk and pass out in your bed. No liability.
Yeah. Or in your office.
Or in your office.
Yeah.
It'd be kind of cool for one of us to pass out in the middle of our show.
That'd be awesome.
That'd be a great recording.
It would take a lot more. Well, maybe not a lot more than we go through.
Dude,
but
we can't drink like we used to, Zoe. We used to be able to put it down like champions. Now I would be like dying. We have this adult fantasy, Zoe and I, that we're going to one day do our pub crawl, but we know that it's going to be like a fucking week of recovery.
Plus, we'll probably get to the second, maybe third place, and we're not moving from there because we'll be like, I guess. So.
Yeah. Plus, you know what? If they have a jukebox, then I'll just sit there all day and just listen to music and get fucking wasted. Anyway, so today's been a good day, and we are covering the institutional side of investors moving into Bitcoin, and this was decided before Tesla announced, which is Stormy's man crush. Elon Musk announced that he was putting $1.5 billion of Tesla's money into Bitcoin, not his money, Tesla's money into Bitcoin. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But we have to welcome a new country. Zoe, while I drink.
Welcome to Pakistan.
Oh, she said it right.
Yeah, okay.
I said it like you say it, because I didn't want to be mocked. I'm very fragile today.
Are you fragile? Is that why you have those little bitch ass ponytail in your hair?
Man, I haven't slept in, I think this will be the 4th night, and I'm feeling very on edge. I looked rough as a chuff. So
what does a chuff look like?
Rough. Depending on the level of chuffness, fairly rough.
Fairly rough.
Okay. Wow, yeah. There's such a difference between us and Britain. So we will go through the institutional investors. Welcome Pakistan. She said it correctly, so that part's really good. And so let's get into this while my co-hosts enjoy their libations, and I will be periodically getting my libation on.
Did we just announce what libations everyone was drinking?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So go, Stormy. We know you want to talk about yours. Go you first.
I'm having a smoky old fashioned.
Ooh. What tonight, Mel. Oh, sorry. Okay.
What's that?
Explain in more detail.
What's in it?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's Woodford Reserve bourbon.
Good.
Double barrel aged bourbon. Then I have Averna. So I've got almost a 50-50 mix of Woodfords and Averna. Then I've got some bitters, an orange peel, and then some smoked hickory.
Technically, it's an orange slice, and then smoked hickory.
What did I say? Oh, orange. It is an orange slice. An orange slice and smoked hickory. A dehydrated orange slice. This way I can keep them in the bar.
Wow.
Okay. And Zoe, who is changing it up.
Tonight, Mel, I am drinking, because apparently my husband has drunk all of the cider. The one night I decide I want to drink Belvedere vodka with Sprite, some ice cubes, and I'm drinking it through a Wendy's straw.
Class, dude. You exude class.
Yes.
So I am drinking Kettle One in soda water with no lime because I don't have any, but I am drinking it through a titanium straw that is better for the environment.
Very good.
But at least you reuse the Wendy straw, I guess. So
yes.
Okay.
Excellent.
Excellent. Good job. So we're all libationing up. And
we're all libacious.
All libacious. Okay, so
libacious
with extra S's.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about Bitcoin coming in our final stretch. On last week's episode, I put in, again, the Acquired podcast link for those of you who want to get a different perspective on Bitcoin and know more about the technical part. That's not something I'm going to cover here because I don't really give a shit about the technological tech. Woo. Exactly.
Wow, you had too much to drink.
I know.
Yeah.
2 sips in. I'm like,
easy.
woo. Yeah.
Such a cheap date.
I know. Oh, fuck. It's been so long. So there's been a couple institutional investors that have moved into the space. And we're going to talk about what that means on the broader scale. And we're going to talk about what that means for Bitcoin in a little bit. But, so we have obviously, like I said, we had Tesla announce on Monday that they put in $1.5 billion of Tesla money into Bitcoin. We had MasterCard move into the space. We had PayPal move into the space last year. We had BNY Mellon move into the space. Twitter has kicked around using Bitcoin in a surprising way, which we'll talk about in a minute. We had Grayscale Investments that has a ticker symbol where they're tracking a crypto basket, which we'll talk about. And then MicroStrategies last year moved $1 billion into Bitcoin. And so we're going to talk and there's others, but we're going to talk a little bit about what that looks like. So let's just talk first about Grayscale Investments. So this was launched in 2013, but didn't receive FINRA approval until 2015. And it's basically an investment firm that offers accredited investors. So we've talked on this podcast before about it, what an accredited investor is. It's a single person earning over $200,000 or a household with spousal income included of over $300,000 a year for the past 2 years with the expectation to make the same in the future. And that qualifies you as an accredited investor. And so they launched this where they offered accreditors, investors the chance to gain exposure to cryptocurrency by purchasing shares in a open-ended private trust. So open-ended meaning that they make a market for it. So if you want to sell, they'll sell your shares back to them. They'll buy it. If nobody else wants to buy it, they'll make a market for it. And it holds more than 649,000 Bitcoin, or about 3.1% of the total outstanding amount. And so what we're starting to see is when we have an asset class, and I kind of want you guys to stop thinking about Bitcoin as a currency, because there's different connotations that come with that. I think it should start being thought of as a speculative asset class, because that's really what it is. And so when we see an asset class come on and gain traction, we start seeing people finding ways to diversify and to put people in it. And in this case, Grayscale did it with the open-ended trust. And then we have Tesla. So as we talked about this Monday of this week, today's February 11th, this will be the next week following. But Tesla announced that they were putting in $1.5 billion into the currency, and I'm doing air quotes, nobody can see unless you're watching us on YouTube, making Bitcoin raise to 7.4%. Of course, in the next days after that, Bitcoin came down a bit off the high and didn't continue to move. So his decision to put the cash in represented 8% of Tesla's overall cash reserves. And it sounds like a lot of money. $1.5 billion is a lot of money. But if you're looking at all of the other S&P 500 companies and their cash and cash equivalents that are on their balance sheet, it actually only represents about 0.05% of the total 2.79 trillion in cash and cash equivalents. But we're going to talk a little bit about the general acceptable accounting principles and why Bitcoin currently cannot be listed as a cash reserve. And so or a cash equivalent. So we'll talk about that here in a minute. And so we're seeing that, there's a lot of big name. And of course, Elon Musk is very flamboyant and likes to get a lot of attention. And so he announced he was moving in the space. He also announced today or yesterday on Twitter that he was going to be buying Dogecoin as well.
Dogecoin.
What is it? Dogecoin. Oh, okay. I do call it Dodge. Like dodgeball, Dogecoin. So he's going to be buying Dogecoin. And the thing is that when we call things a currency, it really kind of undermines the volatile speculative nature of this asset class. And so we'll talk a little bit later about its relationship to the dollar and how it works. And so the thing is with Tesla, with Elon Musk buying the Bitcoin, of course, it puts him in a good position because he has the buying power to buy lots of Bitcoin, and he can pretty much move the market to a certain extent. And we'll see later who really holds all of the money on Bitcoin, the purses. But with such a large buying opportunity, it does give him the ability to kind of sway it up or down. So like if he was to all of a sudden sell out his Bitcoin tomorrow, we would assume that the asset class would actually go down because he would be exiting it. And so there's people like Stormy who just love him to death, and basically if they think he's buying or selling, they think that he's gonna that they're gonna follow his lead regardless, is what I'm saying. Now, per Tesla's financial disclosure, they said that the reason why they were moving into Bitcoin is because that they can't get a return on cash in anywhere else. And so they were moving into Bitcoin, which is complete and utter bullshit, because it has a way higher standard deviation than cash, and it's not the equivalent of a cash equivalent. So they're just saying some bullshit. But he clearly is liking Bitcoin. He's said it publicly. So having a financial disclosure that said that they're moving their cash reserves into Bitcoin because he can't earn any cash anywhere else is a bunch of bullshit. Now, the thing that's interesting out of all of this is that Tesla last year, he was in the middle of a cash crunch, and they had to raise an additional $12 billion in capital from investors because they were cash poor. And so now out of that $12 billion that he's raised, he's turned around and put 1.5 billion of it into to Bitcoin. And he has mentioned that he's going to do Dogecoin?
Dogecoin, but he didn't raise the money last year because he was cash poor. There was just opportunities that he would have been crazy not to take advantage of the market.
And you saying that he has his own cash because that
no, because they weren't cash first. So what happened was, they did an offering for $5 billion. I think that was the number. Then what happens? The stock did a crazy run up, and with that run up, the people who are following it says he's definitely got to do another offering. It would have been crazy not to, because it would have shored up the balance sheets. So it wasn't that he was cash short, but it shored up the balance sheets, which allowed him to even get a superior credit rating, from the from Moody's and all those people. And now they had like a $21 billion war chest, $19 billion war chest, I think, after the Q4 earnings.
Yeah. So according to the article and stuff that I read, they didn't say that, but you have a hard on for Tesla. So I'm going to believe you if that's what you're saying, because I did not look at Tesla's financials. But either way, they raised $12 billion, regardless of what reason they did it. They did it, and they turned around and they put 1.5 billion of that 12 billion into cryptocurrencies. And now there is a concern among the investors who have provided him that money, that they want to make sure that there is some amount of limits that reins in his ability to spend a large amount of money on cryptos.
Well, I'm an investor. They need to talk to me.
Oh, well,
Did Elon not give you a call?
Yeah, he didn't.
Shit.
What an
Shit.
Absolutely. He needs to get his priorities straight.
He does. Yeah. He needs to stop fucking his girlfriend and traveling the world and running.
He called me, and I'm not even an investor.
Wow.
He just likes your accent, Zoe.
Yeah, he likes your accent.
I know. Well, and also me and Grime, we're pretty close. So,
yeah, I figured that.
I named the baby. They named it after me. So
did they?
Yeah.
Another Zoe?
No, it's
AAXYZ.
Oh, that's right. That's right. That's right. It's that fucking like Xavion, like the Xavion Flux or whatever. Well, how do you pronounce the baby's name?
I don't think you can you?
No.
It's like Prince. It's a symbols.
It's if we have to tell you, then
then you're not cool.
Yeah.
Dude, then call me not cool, because the thing is that shit's only cool on paper until that fucking kid gets in a practical place where then
like school.
Yeah, they're going to start being referred to as the kid formerly named Fred or some shit like that, just like Prince was. And
Yeah,
but you know,
but he gets to say, yeah, but my dad's the richest person in the world. Now what?
yeah.
Punk.
It
And he can
still
flex
doesn't
on him.
mean it's going to be any easier for him. And you know what happens when you have most of the time you have wealth that is not earned by the generation that is spending it. They fucking go through that shit because they don't have the value of a dollar. So I'm saying that it would probably behoove you to help your child out and do him a solid and make a fucking name pronounceable.
Dude, they made my name Stomy.
Mine's
Not Stormy. Mine's Stomy.
Mine's not Karen.
Okay, Karen.
Fuck off.
Okay, moving on from this horrible discussion. So MasterCard, this is kind of interesting because as we're talking about PayPal and we're talking about MasterCard. So MasterCard is currently working with crypto providers, but it's requiring that if they are doing anything that all of the Bitcoin is going to be converted into the fiat currency for processing. So it's like we want to get a piece of Bitcoin, but we actually don't want to commit to it as an actual currency, and we're going to make you convert it into a fiat currency. And this goes in with what I'm going to talk later about it not being a currency, but in fact an asset class. And the thing that is confusing as fuck is that MasterCard is currently working with central banks around the world to launch new digital currencies.
Interesting.
So what's better than having one currency that's worth over $40,000 a coin that is based on nothing, but then having multiple digital currencies, all again still not based on anything? I just was like, what the fuck? Are you for real right now? So I don't know. You like everything. Any input on that, Zoe, before I move on?
Absolutely none.
Okay, good times. All right, so BNY Mellon is holding, issuing, and transferring Bitcoin for institutional investors. They haven't moved it over to the retail side yet. Twitter has started kicking around the idea of using some Bitcoin, and this is what kind of blew me away. They are looking at paying employees and vendors in Bitcoin if they want to.
Twitter.
Yeah, Twitter is.
Oh, because Jack Dorsey owns a crap load of it. He's been in it forever.
Mm-hmm. And so the thing is that now they're kicking around the idea that if employees want to be paid in Bitcoin, they can. This is the problem I have with that, and this is what the theme is going to be throughout this whole thing: is that versus an asset class versus a currency. If you have the dollar has a par value of $1. So if I take it out of my wallet now, it's $1. If I take it out in 12 months, it's $1. If I take it out next week, it's $1. It might not be able to buy as much, but it's still a fucking dollar, right? So there is a reasonable basis that you know that if you get XYZ amount of money that you can pay your bills or how to budget. Now, when you're talking about paying somebody in a immensely volatile currency, I'm just like, that just sounds like the stupidest thing on the planet to me. When you're talking about somebody's paycheck, you're not talking about taking some of your money as an investment portfolio and investing in a Bitcoin. You're talking about that's how you're getting your actual payday every single month. I mean, people need to, or week, people 2 weeks, whatever, whenever we get paid, people need to, have something that's viable to track their bills. And I just was like, what the fuck? But yes, exactly, Stormy, because of that guy. And he's later in my notes. And then, of course, PayPal last year decided it was going to start accepting crypto in October. But again, if the merchants are paid in crypto, they will be converting it into the fiat currency as to pay them. So we see a lot of these little hot, cold people where they're like, yeah, we want to acknowledge Bitcoin and cash in on it, but we don't really want to commit to it as a currency because even though the merchant accepts it in Bitcoin, they're going to convert it to dollars or whatever the predominant currency is that time. And so I just thought that was it's very telling in my opinion. So PayPal customers can buy, sell, and hold the cryptocurrency, and obviously including Bitcoin. And so this I found very interesting. Now, when we're talking about how MasterCard is working with other central banks in the global spectrum to create other digital currencies, apparently PayPal was part of the Libra Association. Did you guys hear about this?
No.
Yeah. So they just pulled out a year before deciding to accept Bitcoin, where they were involved
with Libra. That's funny.
With what is so funny? You don't even know what Libra Association is yet.
Isn't that Facebook's version of cryptocurrency that everyone hated?
Yep. So
I hate it too. That's funny.
So Facebook. So they were part of this deal with Facebook Y'all, Facebook is trying to create a currency. Can you guys understand the lunacy of any of this? Like, this is, when I read that, I was like, are you fucking, like, I literally leaned back and audibly said, are you fucking for real? So PayPal was involved in the Libra Association, which was working with Facebook. Listen to me, Facebook, to create another digital currency, and they were like, yeah, this is some bullshit, so we're going to be out of there. And then they came out in last October and said that they were going to start taking Bitcoin. And so the thing is that when in a Chainalysis Inc. last year, they did the research and they showed that hardly anyone used the Bitcoin for anything beyond speculation. So when we're talking about, is it an asset class that you invest in, or is it a currency? Nobody is using it as a currency. A currency is what you buy and sell with for the exchange of goods and services. And maybe it started out like that, but that's not what's happening now. Especially these institutional investors that are moving in, they're not buying Bitcoin to fucking sell that shit or use it to actually pay any of their vendors. No, they're buying it as an asset class. And so this is where people are getting tripped up, because when you look at the dollar, it has a very small standard deviation. It doesn't fluctuate that much. But when you're looking at Bitcoin, it's all over the place. So when people say Bitcoin currency, you have the overhang of a currency and the relative fiat, because we talked about having a finite currency like Bitcoin and the gold standard versus a fiat currency. The fiat currencies, the standard deviation goes way down. So you can't say currency and then put that standard deviation on Bitcoin, because they're completely on the opposite end of the spectrum, which is the reason why I say that I would start thinking of it as more of a speculative asset class versus a currency. Now, JP Morgan Chase has came out, and they were basically saying that the move on a big time level, as far as a whole bunch of companies going in and making as big an investment in Bitcoin as Elon Musk did, they're assuming that that's probably going to be not as predominant as Elon's move. And the reason why, one of them, is because the gap. I'm like a fucking like a seventh-year-old.
He's just like a thigh gap.
Yeah, like a general acceptable accounting principles.
Oh,
yeah,
different kind of gap.
Yeah, you don't like thigh gaps, do you?
You don't like thigh gaps?
Ooh. I mean, don't you want somebody to have a little? I mean, you don't want to be able to like see like a thigh gap, do you?
I like both.
Stormy's like,
sorry, are we talking about thigh gaps? I thought you were talking about some kind of financial term. I completely switched off, and now I'm realizing you're talking about thigh gaps, and I'm back in the game.
She said gaps. I'm like, what's wrong with a thigh gap?
I have no thigh gap, so.
But thigh gaps are nice.
No, that means that you're
non-thigh gaps are nice too.
Yeah, I don't have a thigh gap. I mean, I don't have a huge.
I don't have any gaps anywhere. Gap. No gap between the boob and the. Yeah, no.
Dude, I remember I was on a plane one time, and this hot Australian guy sat next to me, and he was talking, and I, heard his little accent, and I was like, man, I wonder if there's like a, he was hot anyway. And he's like, telling me, he's like, I can't wait to see the hot girls in Vegas. He's like, I love the thigh gap. I only want, look at this. You guys have to see the visual. He's like, I only want the butt to be that big. And I was like,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, so obviously we're not fucking. And then he multiplied it by saying, hey, in his little right, exactly, spread that fucking out. In his little Australian accent, he said, oh, my maid is back there sitting, whatever. So I changed seats with the assholes, and I'm like, whatever, it's your first time to Vegas, go find your fucking little thigh gap, bastards. But hey, we got listeners in Australia, so if you're listening, fuck you.
G'day, mate.
Yeah, g'day, mate. You could have had somebody without a thigh gap, but you were too busy chasing thigh gap. So whatever, be on your way. Mm-hmm. So as part of GAP, generally accepted accounting principles, there is a little bit of a stink as far as how they're going to actually account for Bitcoin, because as far as from a GAP standpoint, it is not considered a cash or cash equivalent. And the way it works right now with the principles that they have in place is that if Bitcoin goes down, goes down. Or if Bitcoin, I'm like, seriously, I'm like a seventh grader right now. So if Bitcoin goes down, they have to mark it to the market, and they have to show the loss of the asset. But if it goes back up, they can't mark it back up. And so what this could end up doing is this could mean that this could actually have ramifications to the overall market, which we'll talk about here in a second. And so it has to be listed on the balance sheet as an intangible asset. And so the deal is if they have an intangible asset that loses, 30% of its value on a swing at the time that they're running their financials, then what happens is that they're going to show and it's going to affect their earnings. And of course, if you're somebody who does analysis on stocks, you're going to be able to look at the asset and go, okay, yes, this is at the time they ran this, Bitcoin was down, but now it's up again. So now that we understand that their earnings are a little bit skewed but for the bigger, broader people, they're not going to really get that. They're not analysts. They're not going to be like, oh, I understand why, Tesla's balance sheet is, whatever. So Japan has stepped in and they have a policy that allows the business to market for crypto, capturing both the up and down side. But when the US met in October for the Financial Accounting Standard Board, they declined to make a new asset class for crypto. So they are just not having it. And the reason why that this is going to be so important when we talk about earnings is talking about the S&P 500 coming up here in a second. And so what we see coming in now is we see a lot of greed and we see a risk-on environment. So when somebody says we're in a risk-on environment in the market, that means that you can't find a bank is not going to pay you shit for your money. Savings, checking, which hardly earns any interest anyway, saving CDs, like they're not doing it. They're not paying you anything. So what people have to do is they have to take on more risk and then they move slowly into the market, first typically through bonds or treasuries, and then they move from there. That's called a risk on market. So we're in a risk on market because worldwide we have very low interest rates and people can't make any money on cash. And so it's causing people to be greedy and to take risks that they would typically not take. And so the thing that I find fascinating about Bitcoin and the most concerning is I'm concerned all the time about the 1% and the 99%, and Bitcoin being a finite currency, as we've talked about multiple times, with Bitcoins just having disappeared through various frauds or bad addresses or getting lost on hard drives. We see that less than 2% of all of the wallets or the addresses control 95% of the supply of Bitcoin.
Wow, 2%?
2% of all the wallets have 95% of the outstanding Bitcoin. So when we're looking at Bitcoin, we're looking at if it was an investment with those ratios, we would call that highly volatile and highly illiquid, which means that you don't get into that shit if you're going to need that money anytime soon. And so the thing is that you have, without the Elon Musks, you have 2% of a population of Bitcoin in the Bitcoin realm that can move the market on your underlying asset. I mean, this is ludicrous, you guys. Think about it. Like you have, most people who are on Bitcoin, a lot of them are all in. You know what I mean? And when we're in an environment where you've only seen something go up, even though if you look at the graph on Bitcoin, it's all over the place, but the trajectory has been pretty solid stream up. And then you understand that 2% of the population of Bitcoin holders can just move the market at any time. They can dump a whole fuck ton of Bitcoin on the market, or they can try to mine it, if we get to a quantum level and create more of it and then hoard even more of it. And so when you're looking at Bitcoin as a sphere, you're looking at a massive separation between the haves and have-nots in the Bitcoin world. And so if we're talking about people are like, oh, it's going to be the world currency. And I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ. We're talking about a finite currency that has built in it the divider between the haves and have-not. And that fundamentally at my core bothers me so much. And so what happens is that, we're already having companies that are moving into the mining space. But what happens if, we'll use Elon Musk, he's on the cutting edge. Okay. He starts mining, like he comes up with the quantum computer. And then he dominates the mining space. So what he does is he already has $1.5 billion invested in the asset. Then he has the ability to fund the technology to continue to mine even more Bitcoin. And, assuming in an extreme example for this point, all of it, who has a vested interest and holding it. It's like this weird self-serving because there's no regulations to stop it because it is a decentralized currency. And so when we're talking about Bitcoin as a currency, we need to start looking at it as a speculative asset that is highly volatile and can move around a lot. And I know that people get a big hard on because it's been going up and everybody wants to have a great story and everybody wants to be rich, right? But the thing is that, if I'm telling you, hey, you can invest in this MLP over here, which does speculative oil drilling. So they have no idea where oil is. They have a hypothetical, where it is, and they're going to go out and just dig to see if they hit oil. Do you want to do that? You're like, that sounds speculative. But if I say, hey, do you want to invest in Bitcoin? Almost 99% of people would be like, hell yeah. It's the same thing. It's speculative. It's speculative on both sides. And so that's the thing that I found so fascinating through the journey of cryptocurrency. And so what we're seeing is that we're seeing that last year, Bitcoin rallied about 300%, but that was still only 0.3% of all the transactions that involved cryptocurrencies by a merchant. So we saw that Bitcoin as an asset class is rallying, but it's not being used as currency. So 0.03% of all of that came through merchants. And the rest of it has just been people moving into the space and buying. And what's happening now is that Bitcoin is being pushed up so far, and with nothing besides perceived value and supply and demand to offset it, what you have is people that the only players who can play in the space now are starting to be big into institutional investors. Now you have some retail people who got in at the bottom of Bitcoin and they're multimillionaires, good on them, but they're still not going to have the same buying power as like a Tesla. And so that just it continues to be a concern of mine that I'm seeing on the radar. And then in last August, Fidelity came out and they launched their first I said it again. What the fuck?
You need to lay off the crack.
I know. Bitcoin. There we go. Not Bitcom. Bitcom. Fidelity moved into the space in August, launching its first Bitcoin fund. Okay. Now, this is why this is important to the average investor. Okay. We've talked a lot about on this podcast about the Dow Jones 30 and the S&P 500 and how those are indexes. And so if people want to see what's going on in the market, they're typically going to look at an index and they're going to see if the index is up or down. And that's going to give them a generalized, informative, nature of if the market's up or down. Well, we had Tesla become part of the S&P 500 last year. They're not part of the Dow currently, but the Dow is even more weighted because we're talking about only 30 stocks. And so people look at the Dow sometimes because it's very theatrical. It's like very, big. It's like it moves big and it moves up high and then it moves down low. And so the Dow is very, very exciting roller coaster to look at, but it's only 30 stocks. Now, if Tesla ever gets into the Dow 30, it's going to wreck that bitch, because the thing is that the Dow, as we've spoken on this podcast before, is weighted, and it's weighted by stock price. And you can have, the top 3 weighted companies in the Dow have a shit day, and then if all the other ones have a good day, it doesn't matter because the index is weighted. So when we're looking at the S&P 500, we're looking at if more and more companies start bringing Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies that are highly volatile, assuming that nothing new is going to come in the market to try to stabilize it, then what we're going to see is if that Bitcoin is going to start bleeding in to the S&P 500. Because if Bitcoin starts getting, I can't even say more erratic because it's erratic as fuck, but if it gets more erratic, then what we start seeing as we start seeing these companies come through and it's affecting their balance sheet, and unless the gap principles change, it could affect their earnings, which could look like their earnings are off the mark. And like I said, an analyst might be able to look at that and go, yeah, I get it. But, the modern person isn't going to be able to do it. And so one of the things that we had happen is that like in when I was talking about, like, let's say in the example, Tesla moving to the space and becoming a quantum computer person and mining all of it, then
it's funny. I want to bring up something about that. It's kind of interesting because Tesla is building the Dojo computer, and that's supposed to be done in March. Now, it's primarily designed for smart cars, for like my Tesla, but it's going to be like one of the most powerful smart computers in the world. I wonder if you can siphon off some of that processing power for some Bitcoin mining, because it is Dojo. You should look up the Dojo computer. Let me tell you how powerful it will be while you're looking at it. I've never looked it up. So like
So
how powerful will it be?
well, and so what you have is like in 2008, what happened is that there was a big stink was, the banking systems almost failed and took us all under, and the Fed loaded them up on cash, and it trickled down to some other companies. And these bastards, instead of doing what they were supposed to be doing with the money, turned around and started buying back their own stock. And there was a whole big stink about it, that you can't do that. Like, you can't use federal money to buy back your own stock. Like, the reason why you got federal money is to help fucking prop up the economy. And so the deal is that if you have somebody coming in with a supercomputer who can thus mine more of their own money, thus pushing their holding in the actual asset up. I mean, this is craziness. So if you have more and more companies that come on line that are in the S&P 500 that start getting exposure to one of the thousands of different Bitcoin type currencies that are out there, what we can start seeing is that they can in turn start moving the overall market in general, which is a very, very scary thing. And even if as an investor, you are not a speculative investor in Bitcoin, in this example, if you are a Tesla holder, you're exposed to Bitcoin. And if more companies in the S&P 500 start taking on Bitcoin as an asset class, and Bitcoin starts turning, then those companies will inadvertently move the market. And the thing is that in 2008, and we talked about this with GameStop, in 2008, when people were shorting the market and just pushing it over a cliff even faster, the regulators came in and said, enough. No more short selling. You guys are crashing the market even more. Like, you're going to take us off a fucking cliff. And, in the money news that I just did yesterday, which would, for you guys, it'll be a week from now, but I talked about how Bloomberg just listed their top 15. This will make you fucking sick. Their top 15 hedge fund managers. So 15 hedge managers from 2020 together made like $23.2 billion between 15 people. Now, if that doesn't make you fucking sick, I don't know what to fucking tell you. So the thing is that you have more companies that are going to be moving these indexes, which can potentially breed disaster for the retail investor. So there's a lot of other things at stake here when we're talking about Bitcoin, besides the greed of wanting Bitcoin. If you take away the assumption that you were going to have these massive returns in Bitcoin, which have been happening, okay, and you look at it as an asset class, it is a speculative asset class. It is not a currency. It is not being used as a currency. And like I said, now that it's getting more and more out of reach of the common man, the thing is that more and more companies, if they come online, they're just going to come into the space and dominate it. And then what will eventually happen is that we would assume it would kind of mellow out unless we have a supercomputer come through. And then what happens is people eventually they're going to have to sell those positions. And if you have a couple corporations that have the bulk of all of the Bitcoin, or in the fact I just told you a minute ago that 2% of the wallets have 95% of the space, they can set the price on it. And it's like they basically can cockblock everybody else out of it. And I know that the spirit of Bitcoin is like, fuck the banks, and we're going to do it ourselves and not pay fees. But it's not turning into that. It's morphing into something else. And so I know Stormy's dying to jump in here, but so what, Stormy?
So I'm looking at the Project Dojo computer because I never realized how powerful it is. And this is supposed to be done in a few months. I mean, it's being built for the last few years. So the way it processes, so it basically, if I'm reading this correctly, it's how we refer to teraflops or gigabits or whatever. This thing is insane. It represents 1 quintillion. Have you ever heard the number quintillion? Which is basically or 10 to the 18th power. This is equivalent to 1 billion billions is what this thing can process. So it would be capable of 1 quintillion 32-bit operations per second. Currently, the most powerful supercomputer in the world is capable of operating at about 415 petaflops, or basically
a made-up word.
A pentaflop. So
I love a good pentaflop.
So this computer, which is equivalency of 0.14 exaflops, but this new computer, so
Are you reading this off of something? You're just saying the same word and putting a different letter in front of it.
So his computer will be exceeding 1 exaflop, which the most powerful computers right now at 0.415 exaflops. So this is going to be one badass computer, and it's really designed for the self-driving cars. But maybe he's able to pull off some of that to do some Bitcoin mining, because
Listen,
that would be pretty badass.
listen to me. No motherfucker, even if you're Elon Musk, is going to create a fucking computer that is that strong to drive a fucking car. Fuck
Oh,
you.
you have to.
Fuck
You
all
have
of
to.
them.
Let me just tell you why. I follow that space, and let me tell you, having an autonomous vehicle is crazy. And they said that even making a left-hand turn would be impossible. So what happens with this computer? Let me just tell you what's happening. So there's a million cars on the road. Even when you're not using the autonomous driving, it's recording everything. These cameras are recording everything. So if it sees a cat in the road, it has to be labeled that that's a cat. Here's how cats operate. Here's how cats move. Versus if we see a trash bag flying in the road, trash bags, you don't need to slow down for. And this is how they operate. Here's a pigeon. Here's a tree leaf. Here's a leaf. Here's trash. So it has to identify everything, and they have to be labeled. So this way the car knows how to operate. Because can you imagine the car slamming on the brakes because a trash bag is flying in the road? That wouldn't be a good thing. If it's an animal on the road, and understanding how the animal operates. So it's a crazy amount of processing. And that's why a lot of people believe that Tesla is going to win the autonomous race, because all the people who drive Teslas, they don't know this, but I just got to share this with you. There's something called shadow mode that happens on the car. So even when I'm not using its autopilot, it's still recording stuff. And when it does something, and it's driving in the background. So when I do something that it doesn't do, it records it, uploads it to the supercomputer. Someone is manually labeling that today. They're like, what do we see on this video frame? We see a stop sign. We see a street barrier. We see a tree. We see leaves. They're going to label everything. So this way the supercomputer can recognize that stuff for autonomous driving. So it's incredible computing power that many people thought could never be done. They never thought a left turn can be done. And it can be. So you do need a big ass computer for that.
Yeah, but I still stand by my original thing. There's no way you're trying to tell me that this motherfucker put $1.5 billion of Tesla's money into Bitcoin, knowing that this, whatever, all the letters you just said, computing power, and he's doing it for a car. Bullshit. This motherfucker knew. He's not stupid, you guys.
Well, no, listen.
Stupid.
I'm not saying that he's not going to use it for Bitcoin mining, because I certainly would, but the autonomous driving field is a lot more profitable than, I mean, it has the potential of being extremely more profitable than Bitcoin. And don't get me wrong, Bitcoin's extremely profitable. But the reason I started investing in Tesla is because I firmly believe that by 2030, Tesla will be not only the most valuable company in the world, but it will be the most valuable company in the world by far. Maybe even I mean, by far.
The main concern I have with Bitcoin is the fact that, we have a 1% to 99% gap, but it was much worse in the early 1900s and the late 1800s, and that time frame, it was much wider than it is now. If in the event that Bitcoin gets legitimacy as far as a currency, right, and let's say on whatever moon it becomes the world currency, which quite frankly I don't see it happening.
He's going to Mars in 2026, so not a moon, Mars. Let's get our facts straight. So Mars,
whatever. So we'll use Mars. I'm partial to moons, but okay, we'll do Mars. The thing is that you're still looking at a currency that the more it's accepted, the broader the gap between the 1% and the 99% is going to get. And as far as I'm concerned, in that example, anything with that much power is too much fucking power. And this is how I look at Bitcoin. And I've been struggling with this through Bitcoin. And I think the only way that I resolved it in my financial brain is that it is not a currency. It is a speculative asset class. And now I can understand, but to call it a currency doesn't work. But this is the only way I can say it. If you have a tower in Manhattan that's beautiful, and you have penthouse, and you have some people in there, and you have some people on the floor level, and then you have a myriad of in between, and it's a solid sound structure, and it's gorgeous, and everybody's in there, and they're loving it, and they're partying, and they have beautiful houses. But that skyscraper is built on sand. Now, as long as nothing shifts, everybody's going to keep on keeping on, and the structure of the building is going to keep them intact. But the minute that a regulation comes, and Janet Yellen has been very, very adamant and vocal about the fact that she does not like the cryptocurrency space. And why would she? Because she used to be head of the Fed, and it is in direct competition to the US dollar. Okay. And that's why in the last episode I talked about when they confiscated, when the Fed confiscated those Bitcoin, were they going to convert them or keep them in Bitcoin? And my belief is they kept them in Bitcoin. But the point is that's an adverse thing. So if you have a beautiful skyscraper with everybody living in it and partying up, and you have some people that are got in early and some people that are late to the party, but they're still having a good time, and regulation comes in and goes, and they don't even necessarily have to come in the way you would expect. We see it all the time. They can come in with investments. We see how the tax structure, in part, and I'm not a CPA or an EA, favors people who already have. So if you get W-2 income, you pay the highest tax bracket for how much income you have, versus if you do a long-term capital gain off a stock, you pay significantly less. So within the tax code, marriage, same thing. I'm single. My tax bracket is higher than Zoe's by default for making the same amount of money because she is married. So the government controls people's actions with fiscal policy. And so if you want people to be married so that you have a more harmonious, 1950s, kids and whatever, if you're in a situation where you need to boost population, then you're going to give tax credits, and you're going to make the tax code malleable so that it favors what you're trying to achieve. If you think that the population is rampant, then you're going to start pulling it back, and you're going to start putting in things in the tax code to deter people from having kids. So when you're talking about the skyscraper, it's in a sandbox. And soon as they want to make any kind of changes, and I can't foresee the future. And like I said, there's a lot of people who have made, millions of dollars in Bitcoin, and good on them. Seriously, I think that's amazing. But what happens is that these little things start coming in, they start eroding very slowly. And, hopefully by that time, the people who have made all their money, they're going to make their money. But the foundation is non-existent. I mean, literally, it is based on nothing. And having more cryptocurrencies also based on nothing, in my opinion, is very dangerous. And I wanted to prove myself wrong. Like, I wanted to come out of this like loving Bitcoin and being like, oh, I had it all wrong and I love it, I love it, I love it. And I didn't get there. But as an asset class, for some money, I see the value. But as a currency, it's not a currency.
So from an asset class, what do you think? Take 1%, 10% of my money, put in some Bitcoin?
So first of all, I can't answer that.
Oh, yeah. That's right. Good call. That was a trap. I wanted to see if
was that a trick question? Okay, thank you. Yeah. So, I mean, the thing is that you guys are going to have to decide between you yourselves and I, or you and your financial advisor, if you want to put any type of money to it. I just wanted to give a complimentary, hopefully, series to the Acquired podcast, looking at Bitcoin from a different side, besides, all of these amazing, ups and downs that we see in the Bitcoin swing, because literally the impact of institutional investors coming into this space has so many fingerlings that are going to go out that we're not even going to see until maybe, you guys have kids, when like your kids are heading into retirement. I'll be dead and gone, so I don't give a shit. But so I mean, it's a little overwhelming. And when Bitcoin was first created, we had a lot of libertarians moving into the space because they're like, yeah, fuck the government. We want to do what we want to do. We don't want to be regulated. Well, now what's happening is that there's so much big stuff coming into it that even though it's not controlled by the government, it's still controlled by the 2% of people who have wallets that do 95% of the Bitcoin. So that's all I had to say. Thoughts?
I wish I was a stoner, because I'd be a multimillionaire right now, because I would have bought a whole bunch of Bitcoin for my Silk Road stuff. Maybe it's not a stoner, right? If I was a dope head and I would have been holding on to this Bitcoin, I'm like, well, I don't know what to do with it. I'll hold on to it now. And now I'd have like a shitload of it because I was buying my stoner stuff. Mm-hmm. Damn it. I shouldn't have listened to my parents.
Nope, you shouldn't have. So maybe Nancy Reagan was wrong.
Yes, Nancy Reagan was wrong.
Yeah. And for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, good. It's probably better that you don't. Our attorney is looking at us disapprovingly.
Oh, no.
Yes,
I don't have anything Bitcoin, but I do have some Britcoin breaking news if you would like me to change the subject.
Instead of Bitcoin, no, we don't need it.
No.
Okay, everybody, it was good for you to join us today.
Yeah. No, we want to hear it because Zoe, ever since we did It's Britney Bitch episode, Zoe has got the biggest hard on for Britney Spears. And I don't know where this came from, but it's
Britney, bitch.
exactly. It's quite fascinating. Yes, please tell me about Britney's breaking news.
Well, I mean, it's breaking news. I mean, it won't be by next week, but I just feel the need to interrupt this very interesting Bitcoin. And I thought that was quite clever of me. Britcoin.
But you don't mean that you're breaking into a very interesting episode. You're lying at that part, but go ahead. You should know because I think it's interesting.
Oh, it is really interesting. And
I got hard on right now. I'm excited. So go ahead.
Yeah. Anyway, breaking news for all Britney fans is that
for a week.
A week ago it was breaking news. An LA court has just ruled, that Britney Spears' father will remain a part of her conservatorship. The current arrangement will stay in place. So that's that.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
This woman is 30-something years old. Let that bitch have her money. Are you fucking kidding me? And
No.
her husband. Fuck her dad. Fuck you, Britney's dad.
Jamie Spears, who we did a whole episode on it, and we're probably going to do an updated episode because there's a new documentary framing Britney Spears, which I'm sure Stormy's probably already seen it, but Mel and I will be watching it, and probably we're going to do an episode
which is
on it.
So you heard it from Zoe first. We're going to do a follow-up episode. I didn't know we were
Britney, bitch.
No, I know. Just
we have to
add another 500 times. We got to do it.
Anyway, to recap, Britney's team had requested that her father be removed from the conservatorship, et cetera, but court ruled today that he will remain. So
wow,
that's the Bitcoin news. Cha-ching!
Yeah, no, I like that. But seriously, fuck her dad. Dude, you didn't make shit of that fucking money. She's been able to, she's obviously still making the money. I mean, what a selfish bastard. I'll go back to Dr. Dre's wife. Fuck you too. Selfish bastard assholes. All right. Is there anything else about Britney Spears you got to interject before I sign off?
Just, I didn't realize I loved her. But now it's Britney, bitch.
I'm glad I opened that door for you. Yeah. So as always, you can follow us. There's one thing. Clubhouse. So we have a couple invites between Zoe and I, and maybe Stormy if we can get him off his ass, to Clubhouse. So if you are a listener, and we're actually rolling out something very exciting that Zoe and I are working on right now, which is going to be cool as fuck, and it's going to be a lot of interaction between us and the listeners if you so choose to do it.
Carry on.
She must be talking. Are you talking to a kid or a cat?
Kid.
Jesus.
I don't think you talk to people.
I'm going to go over and smack them around.
Only to hush them.
Yeah.
Continue.
So if you guys reach out to us, we think we found a way that we can use some of our invites and get you guys in the door for Clubhouse. But we have I do a Clubhouse at now what it stands this time, 1:00 on Mondays with a metaphysicist where we talk about the law of attraction of money and the practicalities of having money. And then Zoe and I are working on something super cool to come out on Thursdays. So Clubhouse right now is Apple product only, and it is invite only at this time. And so if in the event that we have any listeners that want to get on Clubhouse and follow us there so that you can pop in and talk to us directly, our handle, which I still don't fucking know, come on, Mel, is at...
Yep, there it is.
Yeah, I think
it's just at.
You just put an at. That's how badass we are. You just put an at,
yeah.
and you'll find us.
Did you see that they changed the picture now? Oh, sorry.
Hold on. Let me give them our handle at FTOFW pod. Okay. What did we change? Zoe, what are you hot and bothered over?
Oh no, Clubhouse. They had they have a new star as their icon. Anyway, carry on.
Yeah, we saw that. So you can find us on Clubhouse. Like I said, if you need a link, if we have invites, we'll try to hook you up. You can DM us through Instagram or whatever. You can go to the financesotherfword.com website and you can get a hold of us there. There's like 1,000 ways to do it. We have a Google number on there, which at some point in my life, I'm going
to tell you it because I know it.
Yes, go ahead, Zoe.
It's 775-537-5686. 4352.
Wonderful. And we can also get
Brittany B.
I thought she was gonna say 7779311, but okay, I was wrong.
Who's that? What's that?
we covered that on an episode with the numbers episode where he was talking about more stay in the time.
Yeah. So that's where I thought you were gonna go with that, but you went with a
I,
totally
I'm
different number.
I'm all Bitcoined up. So
Okay.
We're gonna have to wound this up or her head's gonna explode. So anyway, you can follow us at Finance is the Other F Word on Twitter, who we have shit luck on Twitter at
whatever.
Amp. Yeah, you can follow us on TikTok at FTOFW_podcast. You can find merchandise and our YouTube channel, everything. If you just go to financesotherfword.com/links, and then everything you need is there. If you have ideas or feedbacks, please feedbacks.
It's all about the feedbacks.
George Michael's, Britney Spears.
Yeah.
There is an S there. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Feedbacks. Let us know. We'd love to hear from you. Our book, Finances Other F Word, Another F Word to Love, is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, and Walmart online. And you can pick up Stormy's book, World's Best Buyer Persona System, on Amazon. And you can follow the dear little Cray. What the fuck?
He is Cray.
Cray.
No, she's
Just say
Cray.
cray. Just say cray.
She's Cray.
I hate the fucking word cray. Gray Kitty, which is at Lily Lou Mittens on Instagram, and you can find us there too. And with that,
that was a meepy squeaky.
I know that was me drinking from my my environmentally sound straw. So with that, we're out this bitch.
Peace.
It's Brittany Big.
Thank you for listening. If you like the show, please rate and review us and tell your friends.